Today is the 21st of July, 2013 year. I am Vadim Zaporozhtsov. I teach yoga. This is our seminar on chakras. We consider the summary of the Khan chakra. So, again, before we go any further, well, what questions, comments? If we are in touch. Don't be shy, we talk. No questions or concerns have arisen. No questions in touch. So look. The logic of the exercises is as follows. Move everything that moves. After all, in fact, what is a Svadhisthana on the chakra? Quite an interesting thing, like any chakra. This is, in fact, the brain, where the gross material body interacts with our subtle body and with the causal body. In fact, this is such a transition from the gross to the subtle, to the subtlest, and the opportunity to influence the gross, to get a result on the subtle and causal. Therefore, when you start doing certain exercises that involve this particular area, which means the lower back, then you willy-nilly affect some of your nerve endings, nerve receptors, and, as a result, well, of course, it moves a purely physical body. And it chains your mind to this place. Your consciousness begins to highlight this place, and the longer it stays there, the clearer and clearer the situation of the structure of your body becomes. This is such a basic yoga technique. That is, before you learn about something, you need to direct your attention to the area about which you want to learn something. So that's it. So we did physical exercises that were supposed to activate this area one way or another, give an impetus to our mind, as a rediscovery of these internal structures. It is clear that as yoga classes go on, these sensations become thinner and thinner. They reach these, as it were, neuropsychic sensations. Certain vibrations, which in the future, well, in general, it is easier to use in yourself. Also, when next time you will experience lust, friends, lust, when you experience it, it makes sense to focus on this area. And, as a result, well, to form an inner idea of how this or that emotion is connected with this or that part of our body, and how it, in general, manifests itself. So, that's wonderful. But there is also a formal side of the grappling of the Khan chakra, which consists in the fact that this principle of water, the principle of such an element of water, is sometimes best realized by meditating on some water expanses, spaces, everything related to water. Actually, that's why they call these or those principles earth, water, fire. That meditation on these elements, as it were, intuitively brings us closer to the concept of how these feelings and principles are born there in general, and these principles work. That here is the Svadhisthana chakra, like, you know, a whirlpool of water. It seems to be formless, but power. Overcoming the earth principle sometimes, yes. So, any questions for you? Also, if they fed there. No. Questions in general, these questions. So yes, come on, if you have any questions, ask right away. And now there is another very interesting detail that the area of the Wakhen chakra, or the principle of water, correlates in our body with the area of the body from the knees to the base of our body, that is, the hip area. The hip area of the Svadhisthana chakra. They are interconnected, so by controlling the principle of water or meditating on the hip area, we actually also come to power over. Well, on all manifestations related to sweet ska on chak, such as lust is there, and so on and so forth. Therefore, there are still practices, exercises, acting on the hip area, and keeping your attention, awareness on this, projecting a feeling on this hiskana chapa. Let me remind you, when we were engaged in the Muladhara chakra, that we meditated on the area from the feet to the knees. And there were a lot of such practices when we stepped with our feet, causing a response, respectively, in the Muladhara chakra. And here are practices related, therefore, respectively, to the matchmaker Khan. Chuk. Now on. We did paired Kriya Yoga, where we meditated on each other like a mirror, to better understand how we ourselves are arranged. This is how we are made, friends, that sometimes it is easier for us to understand how we are arranged when we meditate on another person. It really is like a mirror for us, as a binding of our attention, as if to something external that brings us back inside. And that's why all these paired kriyas, which involve this area here, and do not help us extremely much, well, as it were, to concentrate on the Svadhisthana chakra, and, well, as if from the opposite. Because it's hard to look at yourself. We are not used to looking into ourselves. We are used to looking into ourselves. And then there's a partner standing behind us. We tune into him more easily, and as a response, we get a feeling for ourselves. That's why, in fact, such paired practices, they greatly accelerate the awareness of certain zones and certain parts. Finally, I remind you that the Svadhisthana chakra, like all other chakras, is as if strung on a central channel that connects the consciousness of energy. In fact, the chakra scan summaries are the same, also the area through which you can enter the central channel. In other words, it is possible to do such practices that this impulse, prana sensations through the sand on the chakra, will directly force you to go into the central channels, manifest there. Here, and in particular, we did exercises with you at the Dhyana bank, where, in fact, one of these methods was given. When you exhale, pull the abdominal wall inwards upwards, that is, as if you create some kind of rarefied state inside yourself, and mentally begin to trace the bullet, the path from the chakras matchmaker along the spine, or on the central channel above and above. This is one of the practices of just introducing the central channel through the Svadhisthana chakra of prana. And from this, a large number of such specific practices are born. Well, in particular, sexual practices. When you are excited, let's say you and your wife decided to have sex, but decided to turn this sex into yoga practice as well. Then, of course, it makes sense to master the so-called lossless sex, where you share the energy of pleasure from the energy for the continuation of life. But it's easy to say divide, and how to do it if you haven't had this experience. And one of the exercises is that as soon as you approach a certain level of sexual arousal large enough, then you begin to do the deed of the bank. And then all these sexual sensations, they tend to penetrate through the power of your imagination, or visualization yoga. Your central channel, which, as you remember, is empty inside by definition.
Силой вашего воображения или йогой визуализации ваш центральный канал, который, как вы помните, пустой внутри по определению,
And instantly give a response to the whole body.
давать отклик.
That is, in this way there is some kind of pumping or sublimation of the sexual impulse into a more subtle spiritual energy, which then manifests itself through all the chakras and is quite really felt by the person himself. In other words, it's just a matter of time and just practice when you learn how to do it. Here, in this regard, I want to immediately say a few words about the exercise at Dayan Ban. Some people think that the more they pull into their stomach there, the more they strain, the better. No, it's not. It is useless to draw in your stomach with great force if you do not feel harmony. Like everything in yoga, first of all, it is harmony, the inner feeling that you have grasped an inner channel, a process. And therefore, as soon as you have felt this subtle component inside yourself, only then does it make sense to make a bank. The subtle component is easy enough to feel if you are having sex. Indeed, if you have sex, then you have excitement in this area. So, and as a result, your attention is already focused on this area. In any case, you already feel something. And so, well, actually, by and large, dhyana jar should be studied in conjunction with sexual yogas. Only then will you quickly understand the inner harmony. Because without inner harmony, of course, there is no sex. You won't have your excitement. Here. And when, at the moment of arousal, you approach some level, you can make a jar of adhyana, and thereby, well, it seems that due to this visualization, it will be easier and easier for you to introduce this harmony, or this prana. Or, as it were, so that it enters through the Svadhisthana chakra into the central channel. Actually, that's why practices, sexual practices, are considered quite such closed secrets and powerful. Because, well, after all, if a person is normal in physical and mental terms and healthy, then he can easily show his sexuality. And only one thing is required of him. It is to direct this sexuality in the right direction, in the right direction, in the right way. And this, of course, is where the degree of a person's spiritual development manifests itself. That is, there is even such a saying in the Tantratriate, that tell me how you feel about sexuality, then I will tell you who you are. Such a paraphrased, well-known saying, and indeed. And if you are able to cope with the manifestations of your sexuality, it means that you have already risen above the level of the animal. If not, then you stay with the animal. That is why here in Anandalahara, the ruler of this chakra is called to feel. That is, the manager of Easter, the manager. So, with the help of the Dayan Bank, you can quickly get closer to the feeling of the Svadhisthana chakra. Moreover, well, as if to introduce pram there, to introduce sexual sensations there. Write it down. To introduce there, as it were, sexual sensations, followed by prada, and followed by this effect. When you share the energy of pleasure from the energy of procreation. That is, in other words, you will get the most out of having sex, even more than from regular sex. So, but the other part that goes to the continuation of life will not be spent. And then your sex will turn into chaste
И
sex.
тогда ваш секс будет превращаться в целомудренный.
And you will not lose anything from having sex, you will not degrade,
Вы от
but on the
занятия
contrary,
сексом
you will
не
grow.
будете ничего терять, не будете деградировать, а
Grow
наоборот,
spiritually and morally and physically.
расти духовно
But,
и
unfortunately,
морально, и
once
физически.
again,
Но, к сожалению,
well,
еще раз
first of all, this knowledge was, and actually remains quite closed. And secondly, once again, for how many years I have been dealing with this topic, I do not see such widespread interest. That is, everyone is shouting sex, sex, yes, interesting, interesting. And to say that it is necessary to work with this, somehow I don't want to immediately, right? And finally, when you do this deed during sexual arousal, you will notice how hard it will be for you after all. Because this is the zone, it's kind of, the kind that you're used to, but that you don't pay attention to, in general. It will seem dark and uninteresting to you somehow. Here. And it will take a really well-known effort of pain to do these exercises again and again. Again and again, direct your attention to these seemingly uninteresting details. Here we are interested in, let's say, the pleasure of sex, yes. Our attention and consciousness are easily glued to this. But a step to the left, a step to the right, to manipulate these processes, we immediately become not interested. This is one of the protective features of these secrets of nature. Well, protecting a person who has not yet reached certain heights from getting into the detail. On the contrary, if a person is so inclined to an animal attitude to sex, then, as a rule, his every arousal, his every sex activity leads to loss, and thus his potential begins to fall. Actually, what harms an ordinary person? Because, let me remind you once again, the potential that goes into the continuation of life is extremely valuable. And it is not infinite in each of us. We can't just dispose of it like that, as if it were an inexhaustible reality there. There is a certain limit above which not to jump. So, it means, accordingly, that the bank's deed brings us closer to, first of all, the awareness of the Svadhisthana chakra, and secondly, to its more practical use. In addition, at the moment, let's say, if we say having sex again, when you say, a man, approach orgasm, then it makes sense, again, to use this area of the trunk, in such a way as to distance yourself from orgasm. Well, in particular, when you approach orgasm, it makes sense, to bend in the back. As if to bend this lower part of the back with an arc. So that there was such a kind of tension. And then these nerve impulses inside the same center will switch. That is, it's enough to bend in the back quite strongly like this. But it's individual. Each of you should understand for yourself, because you can't even explain what to do. How will you understand that by straining in this area, you give some other nerve impulses that begin to compete with the impulses of starting an orgasm, and you gain time during which you can already sublime it, or divide the energy for the continuation of life by visualization, and raise it up through the central channel. And, as a rule, it is subjectively felt as flashes in certain centers. Here you are lifting, and you have such, a subjective feeling that once flashed on, in the manipur area, times, as like a flash of light, once, in the area of anahata, times, in the area of mishutka, in the area of aja, and then almost a galu over the top of the head, like not the beads of a saint, right? And all of this is extremely important. But once again, friends, these are very difficult exercises, because I don't want to. Once you have had sex, it would seem, you don't want to do anything there. Then you want to continue to occupy, in fact, as you did before. As in fact, you did from life to life, throughout your spiritual evolution, even in the bodies of animals. And then you start to introduce a new factor, a new strategy for having sex. In other words, you have to parabalimit all the layers of your karmic impressions for a thousand lifetimes before. They are very inert, friends. In general, it is always very inert to introduce something new. That's why sometimes, despite the relatively simple exercises, and even the fact that, in general, you can get information about them. Although I will say it again, this is generally a closed topic, a secret topic. You will not use it simply because you need to rise above yourself to a certain level. And even if you start doing this, you are not enough for a long time. And if you don't get, well, into the circle of like-minded people, then it constantly supports. You know, the effect is, I don't know there, to develop science or culture there. Yes, here's one. Imagine a big country, and there is one scientist there. Will you develop science? Never in the world. At a minimum, there should be some percentage, a stratum of people interested in the same thing. It is the same with regard to culture. There you go. And here is the same situation with these practices. It's just that our, instinctive mind, it quickly forgets about them, and we forget about everything at all. As it becomes not interesting again, we get involved in an ordinary bestial existence. And that's where it stops. Therefore, on the one hand, it seems to be secretly and openly, but on the other hand, no one can really use this secret. Here. Sometimes, and Dayan makes a jar with other banks, in particular with a mule bank. This is when you do. When you squeeze the perineum area, and when you lower the jalhara jar, when you lower your head, and press your chin to your chest. Sometimes it is better to realize these inner feelings. In addition, so come on, for now on this topic. Any questions? Who's there? What? Let them ask. I wrote to the watchman, what will they turn off? It's very interesting. I don't hear it. She wrote why. Well, apparently about the topic when you said that it's not interesting to pay attention in this area. How you wrote that she wasn't interested. Not, yes, it's one thing to be interested, another thing is to bring it to life. The embodiment in life. These are two big differences. You can be interested in, aircraft construction there. But it's quite another thing to do there, to design an airplane. You can. Well, it's one thing when you are. Well, at parades it's always nice to see how, military equipment rushed by, tanks, guns there, and so on. And you try to do it. Then lie down to him, but the real one. But this is already very, very hard, very long, and expensive. Very expensive. Therefore, I have said in this vein that, of course, when some simple practices are given, they are perceived with a bang. But when you call on people to work seriously, they practically didn't eat those who wanted to. So, but are there any questions about this deed bank of a bundle with sweet corn? The topic is not obvious, friends. They are silent. Chideska. So, in addition, there are other ways to somehow get closer to the feeling of how the matchmaker chakra works.
Кроме того, есть еще другие способы так или иначе приблизиться к ощущению.
They are based on a variety of methods. Well, in particular, there are well-known static poses of Habha Yoga, where exactly you can, by choosing a pose. And so do a pose that is strained. This is exactly the part of your back that is responsible for the Svadhisthana chakra.
Выбора позы и так сделать позу, что именно напряжется, это как раз часть.
Well, indirectly, your consciousness will be chained to this place. And actually, as a consequence, well, as if you will rediscover it yourself. There are also methods based on breathing practices. This is when you do certain breathing exercises, and already imagining how your prana is, your breath begins to descend into this area. With an inspiration,
Представляя себе уже, как ваша прана, ваше дыхание начинает с вдохом.
it begins to be impregnated with prana. With exhalation, there are some other processes. That is, there is actually, to be honest, by and large, in the first approximation, it's all the same what to imagine. The main thing is to pair the breath with the memory of the matchmaker on the chakra, and in the future already choose such, well, as if intuitively, the rhythm of breathing that you, well, it would be easier to implement it all. And finally, there are other methods associated, for example, with Nyasa Yoga. When someone else will help you concentrate on a certain place, thereby attracting your attention, and, as it were, opening or rediscovering reports from Thana Chakra inside yourself.
Тем самым притянуть ваше внимание и как бы внутри себя открыть.
Now we are going to do some exercises with you a little later.
Сейчас мы кое-какие сейчас с вами чуть попозже сделаем упражнения.
From this arsenal. Yes, the question appeared in Yegor Cherkasev. And does it make sense to make a jar from a jar at the deed? And why do we have to make a udyan jar only with a mule bank? It's not a law of nature. I don't understand where this question comes from. Asked. Well, friends, Mula Bank, Uyana Bank, Janhara Bank are, in fact, different exercises that can be performed independently, can be combined together. That is, you can make such a cocktail. Moreover, sometimes this cocktail is very, very effective, but in fact, you can apply these exercises separately. Therefore, there is such a, rigid mandatory moment that if you do this, you do what? You do everything. There is no such thing anywhere. Well, I see. Why? Are there any more questions there? Yes, please.
For example, when we look at the bonfire, yes, then we kind of visually help ourselves to chakika, right?
Well, it's difficult there, yes.
Is there anything visual for Hannah from the outside?
Well, visually from the outside. Again, that's how it was said here. This is the element of water. The element of water.
That is, do you see to sit down?
Well, yes. That is, as a matter of fact. Let me show you an image here now. Different images are given of the chakras, but, as a rule, they are all based on what John George Woodrow drew at the time. But in particular, a floating crocodile is depicted here. Well, once again, it's hard for us to imagine what a crocodile is. Here I have a friend who went, he was in shock, and decided to swim. Then a crocodile fits there. He just didn't expect such a reversal of fate at all. And he's swimming. Yes, that is, I understand that, well, if we lived in India, for us there would have to be, as it were, an association of a river, a crocodile. So further, who else has what? Nobody has anything. So, what else do I need to say before we move on to all these practices? Yes, here's another one too. We did the Viparita exercise with you in the Quran. And now, pay attention there too. So, Pasha, let's give you as an instance, you will give it to us. Anatolic dinner. Let's depict Viparita in the Quran. Here is a way when. Leaning then on our hands, we take our legs as far, further as possible. That's just it. Well, so as not to fall here. Let's do it again. So on. And as a result, again, this area, the area of our spine associated with the Svadhisthana chakra, is involved. But again, this is a very difficult pose in the sense that there is a lot of pressure on the elbow. And with unaccustomed especially you will not do it here. And when you take your legs further, 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 further away, just in this place. It means that there is a certain tension there.
Как раз вот в месте, значит,
Yes, there is a certain tension, but on the other hand, there is a certain discharge in the abdominal area.
известное напряжение,
That is, as if there is such an indirect one here.
известное разрежение. То есть
Indirect at the bank's deed occurs. So, in addition, just simply doing the Viparita of the Quran leads again.
кроме того, просто простое выполнение випарита карани
It's just that if you do Viparita Quran in this way, without taking your feet far away, it also leads to the fact that sooner or later you come to the realization and control of the summary of the Khan chakra.
подходите к осознанию и
Therefore, it is also considered one of the sublimation exercises.
поэтому это так.
That is, as when you indirectly redistribute sexual impulses and sexual potential to higher centers.
Импульсы, сексуальный потенциал.
After all, really, when you make a jar at Diana's, do you remember, right? We talked to you that you should imagine as if you were sucking water up. Then the situation is reversed. You have turned over, and like the water should now flow down and down in your head to the higher ones. The higher chakras, that is, the so-called inverted poses are extremely, which were appreciated. They were extremely appreciated in yoga. And here's another thing I want to say about the topic of the chakra scan summary in conjunction with sexuality, friends. The fact is that it only seems to you that you know what sexuality is.
Дело в том, что
Sexuality is so much an elusive thing, it can arise so suddenly and disappear so suddenly.
уловимая вещь, она так внезапно может
And as if everything lived its own life there. For the simple reason that the impulse of sexuality, in fact, it connects all the spectra of our being.
сексуальность на самом деле.
It's not only known there when our genitals are somehow excited there.
Это не только лишь там.
There is both a consciousness factor and an energy factor. And if you manage to somehow tame sexuality without loss, then,
И вот если вам удается хоть как-то приручить сексуальность,
well, as it were, the longer you keep it inside you, the stronger you become.
ну как бы чем дольше вы ее удерживаете,
But it so happens that we do not grasp this bundle as if inside ourselves, and then it just as easily leaks away, gets lost.
мы как бы
We don't even know how to work with it at all. In general, this is one of the most mystical secrets associated with sexuality.
самых мистических тайн.
So, it is believed that if you hold this sexual impulse for longer than a certain time inside yourself, you automatically get a superpower.
Дольше определенного времени внутри
In
себя
other words, I
автоматически
ask you to pay attention. You are not struggling with sexuality. You are not suppressing yourself. But you tame it inside yourself, and do not let it waste, but it is constantly inside you.
получаете внутри себя.
There it turns into such a factor of dominance, a factor of strength, or a factor of energy, which you can then, or consciousness, which you can already spend on anything. But he gaped a little, slightly violated the way of life, the way of thinking, the way of behavior, as it flowed away somewhere. It's unclear how. Friends, a mystical thing. It's a completely mystical thing here, because for the impression that you and I are the tip of the iceberg. And all these processes are really here, under the cover of water. Inside there are all these currents of our sexual manifestations. And we have very small tools to somehow influence everything down there from the tip of the iceberg. But if you manage to do this, then you get an inexhaustible source of strength and energy inside yourself for all sorts of purposes.
Вы получаете внутри себя неисчерпаемый
Well, in particular, such well known in New York as cold resistance.
ну, в частности, такие известные
Here in Tibet, they are very popular when a person can stay there completely naked at quite serious negative temperatures, without experiencing cold. Yes, they are all built, in fact, on the sublimation of sexual energy. In other words, there are two processes going on there. First of all, you must have some kind of elevated sexual potential, but on the other hand, which is immediately retained by you, and transformed into this inner psychic heat, and it in turn gives you physical heat.
и трансформируется в это внутреннее психическое тепло,
And in the same way with respect to others, other manifestations in your life.
точно так же в
In other words, this is the power of charisma, this is the gift of persuasion, this is eloquence, intelligibility of thought, and so on in general, this. If you have put your sexuality under control, it is believed that your words begin to be convincing, intelligible and understandable to other people, and they influence others. So, in other words, a person who has learned to keep his sexuality becomes an excellent speaker, becomes a very charismatic person. Or here, pay attention, as it is said, Apshat chakra is not Rupani. Meditate on this untainted by the pure lotus called sweetness. And one who meditates on this untainted pure lotus, called Svadhisthana, immediately frees himself from all his enemies and shortcomings, such as egoism and others. He becomes the Lord of all yajnas, like the sun illuminating the darkness of ignorance. The richness of his words is like nectar, flowing in well-reasoned arguments, poems, and prose. That is, therefore, in fact, if some of you are planning to become an outstanding speaker and influence the audience, then, well, as they say, God Himself told you to study all the practices related to the Svadhisthana chakra, and with the ability to sublime its sexual energy here. Because in fact, well, as it were, and this is the power of the word. In fact, this is sublimated sexual energy. And a person who can do this, he approaches this higher state. So, questions? In touch? Yes, please.
Well, that's when we experience the lust of the second, right? And we are trying to raise the lost bank up. And how exactly to understand what part of us goes to procreation, right? That's the inner feelings, right? What to lift up, how to divide it.
Well, friends, let's do this. Here is everything that is related to sexuality, and is studied by the Yoga Triad. If someone is interested in something in this area, I refer everyone to a website called Less Than Earl Greater Than Yoga Triad. There's a large selection of my lectures there for, I don't know, 2 years or something. There are even more of them, where we discussed, including this topic. This is a very long and difficult topic. Within the framework of this seminar, it is almost impossible to have enough of it. Now, as for what to do with your sexual lust. That is, there are different ways and methods. One of them, well, is quite well known and a textbook. Let's play a little production like this. Let's say Pasha will experience sexual lust. Object. Yes, but he needs an object. Girls who are not afraid of what to be means to participate in this Nate. No takers. Hello? But I don't. Because he is. But he owes me. I have to prostrate myself in front of her now, do you understand? You just. Nothing. The girl just stands there, she is. She will remain innocent. Her honor will not suffer. Well, really, if someone wanted you, will it take away from you or something? No. It's not your problem anymore. I rolled it to the canteen. So, and look, this is the practice technique. Also work with the summary on Chagri. So, come on, beautiful goddess. Well, yes, come on, what was visible? So the beautiful goddess has appeared. So I remember a wonderful moment when you appeared before me. Here, and Pasha means desired. Who desired her? Of course. No, Pash, you don't have to make scary faces, everything is fine. Here. He wanted her like a woman. That, in fact, is one of the meditations that is known enough. Well, in open sources, as they say in private circles, the young man should focus on the lotus-like feet of the goddess. Here it is. Yes, look. On. We look at it from a distance. And in fact, this is a very interesting situation, because, concentrating on the eula and similar feet, He feels like a reflection of his own. And, as a result, this potential begins to calm down, as it were. That is, he begins, well, as if to go the other way. Therefore, it is believed that here you wanted a girl with terrible power, right? I meditate on her lotus-like feet. Well, as you know, so this is an extreme case. It's a bang on your knees. It doesn't fit. He will call the police. That's it. Here. And imagines that he touches her lotus feet with his palms. Touch it. Not to her, but how if he didn't touch her? That's it. Here. This is also a pose. To a large extent, it redistributes the feeling and helps in general to cope with its similarity to a certain extent. Here. And of course, if the goddess allows it, it is to touch the Christmas tree with such feet. Touch it. Do you hear? Thank you. Here. Oh yeah. Well, you can do it like that. You can kneel down to kneel down. Well, I mean, you touch your head on your knees. So. Oh yeah. Here. And as a matter of fact. Speaking of helping. Here. That's enough, thank you. So, then, and, well, in general, friends, this is a difficult topic. Lust is a difficult topic. You know, I had a friend there. Well, I don't remember this story verbatim now, in general. He was accused. You want this woman. And he's silent. Here. And there it is. You want her. Well, there was some kind of situation there, but he is silent. And something was silent. But this is a very provocative question. If I want to, I'll say, yes, I want her. Yes, well, it's understandable. You can't say that. So the poor woman will really be scared. And if I say I don't want her, I'll hurt her. Imagine that, right? He will say, yes, I don't want this woman. You understand, right? That's an insult, right? Well, it's a goddess, right? That's why everything related to lust, it's so slippery, right? If you say yes, it's bad. Say no. Too bad. Still yes, it can be even worse, yes. A deadly grudge. I do not remind you, all these jokes about Lieutenant Arzhevsky were very popular. So, a little yes, please. Question. Yes.
Regarding what we were doing now, is it related to the moment when we work out? That is, any of them, any situations that you start to take yourself there to nowhere. Well, as it is, I'm not saying that this is a rule, like this. It is possible to guess that in order to come to a feeling, you need some kind of support. And when we visualize, well, as if we mentally look at the skills, do you not get carried away with those practices when we washed smooth? And when we are with us too. Also, as it were.
Yes, of course, friends. You see, all the methods of working with the chakras, they are, in fact, associative. Associative. You can't. How can you affect the chakra? This is a very serious education. There is both the gross physical, and the subtle, and the reason, plus prana, your consciousness, your energy. It's like this. The chakra has awakened. She started somehow, so it's self-manifested. And you need an appropriate, associative tool to do something about it. Here's something to do with it. Yes. Yes.
I don't know. And social energy in practice, they work with the cause of the body.
Yes, absolutely. What are you? This is the very first thing that sexual practices work with. By the way, these are one of the few ways to get directly to the causal body. Because even if we say lust, it's also selective. That's why the man wanted one woman, but not the other. Or a woman has desired one man, but there is no other. Even if you ask them directly, they won't say anything. That is, well, what words will there be? But something at a very deep level, something clicked. And how did I turn on such a toggle switch already? Thoughts, feelings, fantasies, oohs, sighs, and dreams. And everything, right. Something on a causal level. Therefore, strictly speaking, the choice of a sexual partner, and as a result, the excitement from it, it is precisely programmed to the level of the causal body. In other words, it is in this sense higher than our mind. You can reason to yourself says, no, yes, I don't want her there, but this, that, the fifth, the 10th, but I want. You understand, right? Or yes, no, it's appropriate, inappropriate there, but here it goes and that's it. There may be any layers of mind there, but they all don't work if something turns on at the level of the causal body. And you just want it and that's it. And there's nothing you can do about it. You begin to throw these desires out of yourself in a state of wakefulness. You have erotic dreams. With the same plot, right? And so, and there's nothing to be done. This is the level of the causal body. And it determines your trajectory. With whom to have sex, with whom not. With whom to marry, with whom not. From whom to have children, from whom not. And you remember, your next lives depend on it. In other words, this is quite an interesting level. So, to work out just this dependence of your sexuality at the level of the causal body is exactly what these Tantra triad practices call for. That is, where you start working inside with your desires here. But not from the position of their suppression, and not from the position of indulgence, but from the position of comprehension and competent use. And then, you know, it turns into a driving force. Sometimes even this, you know, is compared to the fact that your lust is like a tiger. And you then saddled the tiger, trained it and began to ride it. Imagine, yes, riding a tiger. Here, and at any other moment, he will tear you apart. Still the same. Or let's ride a crocodile, there with the symbolism of the Svadhisthana chakra, where the crocodile symbol is. Crocodile, in general, is a very insidious thing. An animal. It's really dumb. One of the few animals that attacks a person, well, without a twinge of conscience. The rest of the animals, they still have a notion somewhere that a person is at a higher level. They try to avoid him. Well, boundless need. As a rule, no animal will climb on a person. And the crocodile doesn't care, because he has lived for millions of years. There were no people there in the project when he was there, on planet Earth. He just sees us as another prey, right? Here. And here is the same situation. These are the impulses of motivational desires that wanted to spit on your education, on your intellectual development. There. Your degree. I do not know what is there. Some ideas, especially on your religious or philosophical views. You see, this impulse arose many years before a person even decided to come up with what religion is. Or there is a philosophy. He was already there then. Here. So, from whom else? From what? Yes, please go ahead. And in touch. If there is, let them ask. Come on, come on, come on, let's go. There are no stupid questions, there are stupid answers. I'm taking the risk, not you. So,
Is this social energy always associated with lust?
is sexual energy always associated with lust? But, look. After all, you need, as it were, for sexuality. You need some such object, right? That is, well, I mean like this for ordinary sexuality, yes, manifestations. You saw someone, you wanted him. If this object is not physically nearby, then what is it replaced with? your erotic fantasies. Here. And that's why here, well, as if we are locked into each other. In this regard, by the way, another very interesting remark, if we are talking about sexuality, is well known, that, of course, the potential for the manifestation of sexuality is the strongest, of course, when a man and a woman begin to engage in all the canons of yoga without loss.
Конечно же, потенциал проявления сексуальности самый сильный, конечно же, это когда мужчина с
Then it
женщиной
goes, as they
начинают
say,
заниматься
incrementally.
по всем канонам.
That is, as if the level of the physical body is just the first stage, which, if you have worked everything out correctly, leads you to the so-called subtle sex.
Первая ступень,
Sex on a subtle level. It's about something called there, an order of magnitude 10 times more intense in enjoyment.
секс на тонком уровне, он
And if you have played everything there, it takes you to an even higher level.
интенсивный по наслаждению.
This, you know, on the causal level, and there is 10 times more sexual pleasure.
Высший уровень
But it is possible to approach this only under certain conditions.
раз больше сексуальное наслаждение. Но подойти к этому
That is, in general, it is even claimed that we are, in general, wild people in this regard. We don't really know what sex is. In other words, what we call sex, and what we call the pleasure of sex, is, you know, from the point of view of yoga. It's something, you know, on a level, well, quite primitive. Well, like the fact that he itched scratched.
с точки зрения йоги это
And that's it, and satisfied, and forgot, right?
типа того,
And the potential in it is extremely large.
и все.
Extremely large. But you need the opposite sex. That is, in fact, axiomatically, it is consciousness merging with the energy from which prana or ananda is born, and which is closest to the root cause.
Ложный пол. То есть, по сути дела, аксиоматически это сознание, сливающееся с энергией, от которой рождается
The primordial impulse of creation of the entire universe.
которая
And even in some tantras, it is said that this sexual sensation is a pitiful reflection of the pleasure that a person receives when reaching the highest state in the south of Sama.
сексуальное это ощущение, это жалкий отблеск
Here.
того
So, is there a woman in touch too, to look at this and similar hundred?
в йоге сама.
Tamara. I can't say anything about women.
Связи есть?
Here. Unfortunately, I can't say anything about women, but I know that in this regard, female sexuality is a very insidious thing. Very insidious. In general, poor women really are.
Сексуальность, она очень коварная.
Poor women.
Очень
Why?
коварная. Вообще,
Well, first of all, since we, in fact, are Neanderthals, savages, and we don't know how to have sex. The average duration of sex is very small.
собственно, с вами неандертальцы.
That is, there are rarely men who are able to satisfy a woman,
Средняя продолжительность занятия сексом очень маленькая.
because the man is more busy with himself. He's one time, he has sex with losses, and that's it. He turned away and fell asleep. Or he just doesn't want to. That's all he doesn't want. Well, I don't want to. I'm tired at work. There, this, that, the 5th or 10th, not up to it. And as a result, women start to get violent. They don't even want to have sex with a man. Why? As soon as she started to feel something, and that's it. And it's over, right? And as a result, she has a terrible irritation and dissatisfaction.
И кончился, да?
You're about to stir her up, and that's it, right? Here. And then sometimes it accumulates. And in general, here is a sudden surge of her terrible desire, terrible. Probably, here is a male surge of desire for a woman, a tenth of what happens to women. She has everything inside to climb the wall, everything has faded. I want sex, right? And the man is not around. Oh, it's hard. She is ready to kill everyone, tear her husband to pieces, if he is not this, not that. And then it can also suddenly go away from her. And she will sometimes the woman herself is surprised. But how so? Why did it suddenly hit me like that, right? Here. And the question is that no matter how slightly we are not balanced, and if a man begins to practice chaste sex without loss, then he has, first of all, the desire, the opportunity to have sex for a long time. 4 hours, 4 hours. Literally 4 hours. And on the other hand, he has a desire to do it. Because desire is also, a thing, still so. While the young man is with him, he is full of desire. And a little older than the statue, and I don't really want to. Stress at work there, a football match, a new car. What kind of sex? Here. And, as a matter of fact, a woman can't come up either. Therefore, well, in a good way, there is also a spiritual and sexual revolution waiting for us here, right? Because stop being Neanderthals. It's necessary to be cultured people in sex already. And how to become cultured people if? Therefore, no one says anything about this. And look through all these porn sites, does it say anything at all? No. Watch all the shows. Has anything sane been said? No. In general, you will not find any normal intelligible information about sex anywhere. Well, with rare exceptions, very few. Here people are left to themselves. And even more so, if sex is with losses, then these flashes of desire are replaced by emptiness after you have lost everything. And now a person is thrown out of heat and cold, then he really wants to, then he generally thinks with horror, God, did I really do everything? Yes. Here. And back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Well, in general, we have a meddle from one extreme to the other, the lack of culture. But this is a separate topic. Once again, everyone who is interested, and I am sending to the website of the Yoga Squad, less than Earl greater than. There are a lot of interesting lectures on this subject. Yes, and the time is very short. Is there anything else there? Yes, therefore, what to do with a sharp surge of female eroticism? When a woman is ready to climb the wall. I don't know. I'm honest, it is. I know this topic very well. It's terrible. Compared to which there is no other horror. It's not a horror. To know only horror is horror. Here. That's it. Friends, come on, we still need to do one practice, as time is running out for us. Wonderful. We're cleaning everything up again, so we're making our pretty one. Pretty Yandra. So, it's wonderful and we lie down on our backs. So, and look, there's another one. A small exercise for the sweetness of the chakra camp. The legs are pretty. The fact is that yes, indeed, when desire, lust, captures, it is like a tsunami wave that demolishes everything in its path. In particular, we do not even understand what is happening to us, how it is happening. So, here's another exercise for the sweet scans of the chakra. This is when you take 2 palms and place them under you. I'm going to turn around right now so we can see. That is, you are just making such a bump from the palm of your hand in the place where here. This is the center from the sand to the chakra. That is, and you involuntarily begin to concentrate on it. But in the future there are more options. Let's say you can clench your hands, fists. And now pay attention. You immediately, first of all, attention was transferred there. And secondly, you kind of. Well, the lower part of the body began to hang down, as it were.
Внимание перенеслось туда, во-вторых, нижняя часть тела свисать начала.
Miracles. And now the next exercise is also look at me. You lift the pelvic area and prop it up with your hands as if. Again, and sit on your hands. You seem to squeeze this area from Zabrahim. Here too, it is necessary to experiment with the situation. Well, as if you are propping up this area with your hands. And how would it squeeze there? And the sensation passes to the central channel, to the spine. Here are the summaries of Skanacha shouted from Manipur chakra.
Центральный канал на позвоночник, от Свадhisthana чакры к Муладхара, к Манипура чакре.
Wonderful. We're going out.
Замечательно.
And now let's break up into pairs again. I'll show you one more exercise. Unfortunately, we have very little time left,
Идемся по парам, я еще одно вам упражнение покажу.
so let's pair up. In the center are men, you know, women.
Очень мало.
Mine, yes. So she's wonderful. So, come on. Yeah. And now, those in the outer circle, lie down on their stomachs. Lie down on your stomach.
Так, давайте, ага. И теперь, кто во внешнем круге ложатся на живот,
So look.
ложитесь на живот.
And those who are side by side, we begin to make a non-language just in this area.
Значит, смотрите.
That is, roughly speaking, we begin to massage this area from the left and right.
Начинаем делать ниясу как раз этой области.
Sometimes, you know, it helps a lot.
Начинаем массировать.
It happens that women have a lot of pain during menstruation.
Иногда, знаете,
And then somewhere in this area, you start massaging, and the woman seems to let go.
женщин примесячно.
But it's not for everyone, it's very individual. And in fact, well, it's kind of clear that at the time of menstruation, a woman's sexual energy is again involved. And the effect on the body, that is, the sweetness of the chakra. We indirectly alleviate all those problems there or questions that arise there.
Энергия женщины и воздействие на тело, то есть Свадхисthana чакры, мы косвенно облегчаем все те проблемы.
That is, it's like a massage, not a massage, not a massage, right? Well, it's called rude me enough. And there is a very subtle self. It's you who are barely touching this area, barely touching. As if on. Swipe up and down, distracting consciousness.
Это вы едва касаетесь этой области, едва касаетесь. Как бы на
And finally, one more exercise. It's so much more serious.
сознание.
You clench your fist and start tapping.
Ну и наконец еще
You start
одно
from the
упражнение,
sacrum, and climb a little higher up the spine.
Вы сжимаете кулак и начинаете
That is,
выкручивать.
here is such an impulse.
Начинаете от крестца
And depending on how pleasant or unpleasant, the blows can be quite intense.
То есть вот такой импульс. И в зависимости от того, как приятно или неприятно, удары могут быть достаточно интенсивные.
As a rule, there is an impulse like this, the tension of sharp relaxation. It even happens sometimes very pleasantly. Well, when like this. But here it is necessary to get exactly on the spine.
Давление бывает даже иногда очень приятно. Ну, когда вот так вот. Но здесь надо попасть вот именно.
It is clear that this is only for those people who do not have diseases with the spine, that is, for normal people. Because I always give these exercises, they immediately start hailing me. Oh, and in that massage manual, there it says before. And there it says something like that, and there it says something else. Friends, this is for healthy people.
Там пособие по массажу сказано то, а там-то эдак, а там-то еще что-то сказано. Друзья, это для здоровых людей.
So wonderful? We have swapped places, and are doing the same thing like this.
Так, замечательно, поменялись местами.
So, Pash, let me do it for you.
Делаем все
Feel it. So, the very first thing is to start massaging this area.
Паш, давай, тебе он сделаю.
Here, a little bit of you. Here is the coccyx area just above. Again, this is the area between the sacrum and the injection, but closer there, to the sacrum.
Вот область копчика чуть выше. Опять же, это область между
Although it's hard to say lower or further.
ближе туда к крестцу. Хотя трудно сказать, ближе или дальше.
So, in addition, there are bija mantras. In particular, the bija mantra, the summaries of the chakra scan, are a syllable to you.
Кроме того, есть биджа-мантры.
It is also used in all meditation practices when you start repeating this mantra.
Это слог ванна. Также применяется при всех практиках.
That is, how would you approach the impact on the ska reports on the chakra through the repetition of the mantra? This is also a method.
То есть как бы вы приближаетесь к воздействию на свадхистхана чакру через повторение мантры. Это также метод.
Okay, now we're barely touching.
Так, теперь едва касаемся.
And now we start tapping with our fist or the back of our hand.
И теперь начинаем постукивать кулаком.
And the one who is lying down can sometimes even direct his hand. That is, direct your hand somewhere, help.
Лежит, может иногда даже
Well,
направлять руку.
without experience, it's hard to understand and identify where you touch firm the first time,
Направляйте руку куда-то.
not from the south.
Без опыта с первого раза тяжело понять,
Well, you can beat quite intensively.
куда ты дотрагиваешься.
Again, if it hurts, then we warn you.
Можно достаточно интенсивно бить. Опять же, если больно, то предупреждаем.
Wonderful. Wonderful, friends. Let those who are lying down, lie down a little more.
Чудесно, друзья. Пускай те, кто лежат, еще чуть полежат.
We sit down carefully.
Аккуратненько садимся.
So, unfortunately, our time has come to an end. Does anyone have any questions that should be answered right now?
Итак, к сожалению, наше
No.
время подошло к
If you
концу.
have a
Есть
question.
ли у кого какие-то вопросы?
So, friends, then I will ask you to write a review about the seminar after the seminar. Please go to the Open Yoga website, less than Earl greater than. There is a forum there.
Тогда я вас попрошу
Find the feedback forum thread and write something.
семинаре, пожалуйста, зайдите на сайт openyoga.ru.
Liked, disliked, all the pros and cons. I will demand the same from those who have been in touch with us. Go to the Open Yoga.ru website, find a forum, find a feedback forum thread, and share your feelings, impressions, thoughts.
связи. Зайти на сайт openyoga.ru
And I'm saying goodbye to you. That's it. Hooray! Hooray!
и поделиться своими ощущениями, впечатлениями, мыслями.
So, friends,